And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Tom Vasel.
Hey folks, today we're taking a look at WarQuest from Mr. B Games, L4 Studios, and Glenn Drover. And I'm going to be reviewing this one slightly differently than I review most of my board games, because I want to start out by saying how much I hate the game. I really wanted to like WarQuest. It has really gorgeous miniatures, but it's just a really bad game. And so while I'm describing the game, I'm going to point out the things that I like and don't like about it. I'll give you a hint. I like the miniatures. Now let's get into the things I don't like. But first, let's throw all the miniatures at the table. So here is the massive board. I mean, it's a very giant board. I'm kind of squishing it on the table here. It fits the other direction. But this board, one of the first problems I have was between the board and the rule book, I wanted to tear my hair out at certain points. The rule book starts by saying, put all the units in their home territories. What are those home territories? It's pretty easy that maybe up here it says the elf home, that's where I put the elves. But I wasn't quite sure who goes up, for example, in the Wastes of Nor up here. I don't know who lives in that area. A detailed picture and description would have been nice. Not to mention that when you fill these areas with all the different miniatures, you can't read anything on the board. But that's not really my main complaint. My main complaint is the board. Now, it's not so noticeable here in this video, but you can see here that there are lines that split the different territories from each other, and that's a pretty important thing. You also notice these other lines that are roads from the different cities, from one city to another. Those roads mean absolutely nothing, and yet there are many times where on the board you will get confused because you'll say, wait a minute, is this separating areas, or is this line, this road over here, does that split that area off? I don't think so. No, it's a little bit lighter than this one. Does this split this off, or is this one big area? And it's really kind of confusing. Not to mention, there's a lot of cool things on the board. For example, here you see the Crater of the Sun. And there are a lot of cards that refer to these, but give you no indication of where they are on the board. So you'll be like, oh, great, I need to find the Red Fortress. Where is it? And you'll spend a long time looking for the different things that are on the board. Sometimes they don't even have like a name by it. You just got to look for the picture. And I found that to be very problematic. The board itself is big enough to move all the pieces on, and it certainly looks nice, but it is very difficult to use. Now, the goal of this game is to get the most points, and players are going to do that by moving armies around the board. Now, players are going to have leaders that have these colored bases that you will put on them to show that an army is yours, because you're going to be able to recruit different units into your army. Now that sounds really neat, and indeed it is kind of cool that you can have different units that you'll pick up at the beginning of the game. You can buy these units. Unfortunately, that devolves because as the game goes by, to buy more units, you need to march to the homeland of whatever race you're trying to buy and get them. And if you can't get there, or they're really far away, you can't get those. So your army's not going to be quite as diverse as you might think. It's going to be with whatever armies you can get to and have join. And while that's thematic, it's not nearly as exciting because you really don't have kind of cool combined armies. You have, oh, I got orcs because they were the only thing I could get to. And so you're going to be moving these guys around and trying to do missions. Your leader is going to be doing missions, and also you're going to go around and fight battles with the different people on the board. Players are going to have different quest cards, and these quest cards are going to be, you're going to need to go to specific locations on the board and fight something. So for example here, you need to go to the fields outside Burgle and defeat the tunnel troll that's threatening the food supply. All right? And also the troll has some special abilities. We'll talk about combat in just a second. But this is going to be worth points. And these different quests that you have are going to be worth points. So in the middle of a giant war game, you have your leaders going off on quests. And that sounds like a lot of fun. But it's not. All right? Quests are possibly the worst thing in this game. To have a quest, let's say my quest here is to go to the Haunted Forest and fight some evil tree man. So I get my leader to the Haunted Forest, and you're allowed to bring one other guy with you. And then you're going to be attacking this. So first you're going to be using these dice, and I'm going to laud the miniatures of this game. The miniatures of this game are quite good. The dice, though, are horrible. They have like imprinted sides, but just barely, and they're also very boring looking. But here's the deal. When I attack this beast here, I'm going to roll my attack values. Let's say my attack value is 3. I'm going to roll 3 dice, and I'm going to try to get a hit on these. Each die has a hit on one side. There's also a retreat on one side, but that's only used for battles. And then the bad guy will roll, and he's trying to get hits on you, and you can kill off your guy that's with you, and then you need to watch your defense, or the bad guy can totally destroy you. That is literally how a quest works. You are going to roll these dice and hope that you get a 1 out of 6 side. I cannot emphasize how awful that is to try to roll a 1 out of 6 hit. It's boring. You can have literally really long quests. Everyone's standing there going, I hope someone kills somebody else. But there's not much you can do. There's a few cards that you can get over the course of the game that are power cards. And so maybe you have some sort of thing that will help you. Like, for example, +1 defense in quest combat. So you can go pick these up and buy these. But honestly, even these still make the whole thing just kind of a crapshoot. You're not really sure who's going to win a quest. Now, winning a quest is good because it's worth points, and it's a way to make to find more stuff and go around the board. But for the most part, they're just random. So who cares? Now, the designer of this game is Glenn Drover, and he loves taking units off a board and putting them on their own battle board. This is something he's done in several of his other games, like War Age of Imperialism, etc. And so he does it again here, and you're going to move, whenever you fight someone else, you're going to move people into your front and rear flank. Now, again, I got to say a good thing about the miniatures here, they have little dots on the front of them to show just how many dice they get to roll. But other than that, essentially, you will fight with your front, rear flank, front flank. Your archers get to fire first and stuff. And again, you're rolling these dice, which may make people run away, retreat, or you might hit them. Or then you can bring in people from the reserves if you have them. But again, you're essentially rolling dice and trying to get at a 1 out of 6 hit or a 1 out of 6 retreat. And it's extremely random. But hey, each of these guys has special abilities. Well, that's really great. So I'm going to look for the special abilities that they have. Oh, I see. There's these paragraphs in the rule books that tell you the special abilities here, but they're nowhere else. So you will constantly be looking through here saying, okay, an orc bonus attack dice in the first round of battle in hand-to-hand combat +1 for each orc foot. Okay, and then you need to remember that. That really should have been written somewhere else. But there is different stats for the different units, and there's also an expansion that I'm not going to waste my time reviewing because even though it adds a bunch of more cool units, it doesn't change the way the game plays. They just have different stats. So there's different costs when you go. You're going to go around the board recruiting these guys into your army, and then they have a certain number of attack and defense. Defense is basically hit points. And again, though, it just all comes down to rolling these dice. There's other things that players can do, like once you control different regions on the board, you can tax them. So you can see the hold fast here. I can tax and get coins. So that's one of the actions I can take on my turn. And players will have conquest cards. These are cards that when you attack someone and you win, you can get points. Or if you if you control something, like for example, if I control the hold fast at the end of the game, I'll get 15 points as long as it hasn't been destroyed by someone. So there's a lot of different cards that players will have that tell them to control different areas on the board. But there are lots of cards that are these glorious victories, and they will give you points if you beat somebody. So let's say Susan attacks Bob, and it's a brutal fight, but Susan wins barely with a few units left. And I'm in the same region. There's no reason for me not to go after Susan and completely destroy her, even though she's weak and she might not be winning at all, because it's worth me getting 10 points. So this game really allows you to pick on people who are not doing well to begin with. Okay, I'll be honest here. I think if this was 1995 or 2000 maybe, I would be a little bit more merciful to this game. I know this probably because I enjoyed playing War Age of Imperialism and the Civil War and the other games that Glenn Drover designed. This, even though the miniatures are better here, almost feels like a step back from those games. And while this game might have been fine in the 80s and such, it really doesn't cut it today. I mean, the dice themselves, that is a huge strike against the game. That you only hit on 1 out of 6 sides, and really you just get to roll a different amount of dice than your opponent. That's really, not only is it boring combat, it's just bad combat. You'll see people come in and they'll fight for a few rounds and no one hits anyone. Then maybe someone makes someone retreat and then someone else hits. And you're like, okay, you won. Congratulations. Good job. And these power cards, going around and getting these cards, you can draw these and buy these. That's not a bad idea. They're cool, but they don't change these battles enough that they really matter that much. And if someone gets several of them and does make themselves a little bit more powerful, then how do you go and beat that person? My second huge strike against this game is this whole emphasis on, hey, beat anybody in a battle and you'll get points. Now, I like games that promote attacking, but this game promotes you to attack some weak person somewhere, anywhere, just to get points. And if you do beat someone and your army gets scattered or something, or let's say someone beats you and you retreat and they get points, you know someone else is going to attack you, because why wouldn't they get points? Not to mention that these quest cards, these conquest cards, tell you to control different parts of the board, and you might get some that say control 2 different sections, and someone else might get some that say control these areas next to each other. They have a huge advantage over the people who have to go around. Then there's the graphic design of the board, which is a kind of a mess. The rule book, very not well written there. It needs a lot of pictures. There's not many pictures. I mean, for example, when they show you the different units here, they show you drawings of these units that don't even match the miniatures sometimes. So I'm like, well, I guess this is the Satyr foot guys, and it's just it's a big mess. And moving the combat to another board it's just a time to move these pieces over here to fight and go back and forth. Okay, I'm getting more annoyed. Oh, I forgot there's event cards that do sometimes good things and sometimes bad things and sometimes nothing. But, they're just not that impressive. The whole thing would have really impressed me when I was 12. I really think so. And I think I would have been like, wow, man, I can't believe I died again. And I would have maybe given this game a lot more chances. But the fact is, there's a lot of fantasy games out there. There's a lot of them out there. So this one needs to show that it's pretty neat. The concept of this game, where I go around and recruit the different units from the different armies and put them together and go off and do quests, that's not a bad concept. I like that concept. But the practice that this game put in, when you first open a box, you're going to be wowed, because there is a ton of miniatures and it looks really cool. And then you'll play it, and unfortunately, I just don't think many people are going to enjoy it at all. It swung for the fences. It really did. But it's a big miss for me. This is one of my least favorite games of the year, honestly. I really disliked it. That is WarQuest. Dice Tower Judgment, too many problems.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.
Shut the door.